I've never seen Hamilton, even though it appears tailor-made in a lab for someone like me who has an exact replica of the Declaration of Independence and collects antique maps and globes. But I do know a lot about Alexander Hamilton, and he's one of the most important founding fathers and most important figures in our country's history. So he's born in Nevis, and he had a rough upbringing. He was basically on his own from the age of 13. His mother passed away, and his father left him. He was an illegitimate son, basically, and he had to get a job at 13, and he clerked for a local lawyer. And while he was clerking, he would write to his friends being like, I hate my station. I hate groveling for other people. He always, and this is a theme throughout his entire life, believed he was for something bigger. And by the time he was in America, he sailed to New Jersey, never went back to the islands where he was from. He really wanted to make a name for himself. He had even written in that letter at like 13 that like, I wish there was a war so I could make a name for myself. He wanted to be something big, and he was a genius. He was brilliant. He had a really good understanding of modern economics. He read a bunch. And the difference between him is not that people at the time didn't understand economics, is that people at the time who understood economics weren't in positions of power. And Alexander Hamilton, he became George Washington's right-hand man, but he was still like his assistant. He wanted greatness. And he eventually got it. But he really understood the modern credit system and how important that would be. So after the war, whenever they're founding this country and they're trying to set up the systems, he really understood that there needed to be a stronger national government. Now remember, in the first government of the United States was this Articles of Confederation that was weak, untenable, impossible to work because the states were too powerful. Now remember, the United States, independent states basically coming together, independent colonies. And a lot of people, like Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republicans, Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist, so like more stronger federal government, but the Democratic Republicans in a lot of these states didn't want a strong federal government, and something they really didn't want was a national bank. Alexander Hamilton wanted that a lot, and so he relied on this phrase in the Constitution, necessary and proper clause. The federal government can do what's necessary and proper. That has expanded in scope dramatically, in large part due to his arguments. Now, he also wrote the majority of the Federalist Papers. Now, you probably read those in high school, but those Federalist Papers basically articulated the basis for what the reasoning was at the time. Like, why were they doing this? Why were they doing it? Federalist Papers articulate that, and Alexander Hamilton wrote most of them because he was a great writer and he wrote lots of stuff. He was also more progressive. For the time now, there's disputes about his legacy, but he was definitely opposed to slavery. Now, he might have been involved with it. That's something a lot of people don't know. There's like some historians who think he was, and that he might have even owned slaves and kind of like scrubbed that. But he definitely was more progressive, but he wasn't per se like he was an elitist also. He thought like the people in charge should be these like educated, wealthy people, basically. And those, who were those at the time? Those were a bunch of white dudes. So obviously, all of these founding fathers, their legacy is mixed. Alexander Hamilton's is probably at the top of the bunch. Like, he's one of the better ones. And he formed the foundation. He understood that if the federal government did not have the power to tax people, I know, taxes suck, but like he understood that they needed that power because all of these independent states, all of these colonies had so much debt from the war, so much debt. And there needed to be some backstop, some guarantor that this debt would be paid, that the U.S. government would pay these debts. Otherwise, no one would lend money to them. And the government borrows money all the time. The national debt today is like tens of trillions of dollars of debt. But you're allowed to keep borrowing money because they believe that you will pay it back. U.S. treasuries, like the bonds and stuff, are some of the most secure assets you can buy because you know that they will be paid. And he understood that. And that's why he wanted this national bank. That's why he wanted the federal government to have the power to tax. Now, he eventually died in a duel. Aaron Burr, who was a complicated figure who really just wanted power. Alexander Hamilton hated Aaron Burr. Hated. He thought he was like everything that was wrong with government, like just in power for the sake of power. Alexander Hamilton didn't even like duels. Like, his son died, like in the same place where he would eventually go do a duel and die, to Aaron Burr. And he wrote this letter before the duel saying like, I'm going to intentionally miss. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know, but like already exhibiting great PR capabilities for himself too, even if that wasn't true, which it probably was. Like, I don't have a reason to believe that's not true. Like, some historians don't think that's true, but there's not really a reason to believe that this letter is not true. Although it was only to be, the reason is that letter was only to be released in the event that he dies. So, but dies in this duel to Aaron Burr, who goes on to die in disgrace later, like has to flee, like tries to start his own government down in like Georgia area, like sketchy dude, philanderer. And Alexander Hamilton dies and leaves his wife and children in tons of debt. People don't realize this. All the founding fathers left, most of them had tons of debt when they died. They lived some extravagant lifestyles. And at the end of the day, though, he inspired a musical, which I have never seen. And maybe that's his greatest contribution. It's not. It's the American credit system.